My mistake was thinking that video games are art.
How about this?
Disclaimer, this video is a remake of an older video mainly because there are people who will discount the fact that I used a furry character in my original video.
You're totally not serious. You can't be that stupid, right?
No, he might actually be that stupid.
And basically slam me for it. This video expects you to be somewhat familiar with YiiK, but will give some explanation and context when I talk about it.
I stepped into the elevator, expecting to find the cat. I scanned the dark floor and found nothing. I sighed as the elevator began to shake, vibrating with motion. The elevator came to a smooth but unexpected stop. I cringed with anxiety as the lights flickered. Please don't die, please don't die. I pleaded with the mechanical gods to keep the power on. My prayers weren't answered.
Oh, shut the up! I love video games. And I love stories in video games, but sometimes the story can be getting in the way of me enjoying said game, even when the narrative itself is the means of entertainment. Don't get me wrong, if it's a visual novel, well, that's the name of the game is reading.
Wow, another reference we don't get. You must be a hardcore loser.
That's kind of the point. I'm not going into Phoenix Wright expecting him to throw Hadoukens. Coffee maybe, but not Hadoukens. But I shouldn't be buried in useless, boring dialogue in order to get to the meat of these games. I understand that there's a need for establishment, but there's also times where games will just bury you in dialogue and such and will make you want to go, "Let me die." That isn't to say there aren't ways to get around this, but I've seen a lot of games that have this bit of an issue of putting too much dialogue in their games. And that's where we come to the main theme of this video, YiiK.
Seems like something boys would like. Do you recognize the location from these photos?
That's behind the old grocery store. Obviously, you've been there before.
Interesting.
What's your name, by the way?
My name's Vella Wild. It's interesting to meet you. I'm guessing you're a cameraman, and this is your sidekick, Ginger Boy?
Usually I go by Alex. Only my mom is allowed to call me Ginger Boy.
Stop it, please, I beg you!
I've talked about this game once before in the past, and most people have gotten the idea that I don't think YiiK is a good game. And they'd be right! And as it turns out, YiiK is about to get a content overhaul. They're gonna revamp the battle system, and they're gonna add more bosses and a brand new character. Frankly, I don't think adding more characters is a good idea in this bloated mess, but hey, I'm gonna be optimistic here. And I figured I'd talk about the game one more time in a better sense and give some attention to some issues that I had that I didn't bring up in my original video. I do want to make a video talking about YiiK when it gets an update, but for now I figure it's time that we talk about the original game as it is right now. And I'm putting that off by talking about Persona first. You know you've got a good video when you're critiquing a well-known popular game title from ages ago, and that game has pretty much allowed the Persona series to branch out from the Shin Megami Tensei series. Persona 4, it's a game that got me into Persona as well as the other Shin Megami Tensei games, but it isn't perfect, and what's something you can say about every game, I had to bring it up here. Now, I'm not going to waste your time with a 5-hour-long video that's overly nitpicky to paint a game being terrible.
Every day I wake up and I hope you're—
and end up contradicting itself and being a condescending but Persona 4, it's a game that I love. One of the biggest issues with the game that I have is how it takes you a long time to actually get into the actual gameplay. You get off the train, you meet your family, you have a spooky little dream.
I am thou art me.
That doesn't count as actual gameplay. You go to school, you meet some of the plot. And all the while, I'm just sitting on my couch, turning into a statue with an opposable thumb to hit the X button. It's a serious wall for more casual players to get into the game and prevents them from getting into the actual content. In contrast, Persona 5 fixed this greatly by having the player be in the middle of the plot. Of course, the game now goes to the tedium of having it be set in a flashback, but Persona 5 at least gets the player into the action and will have them be more willing to get into the game since the pacing's a lot better at the beginning, and it allows the player an actual taste of the action of the game before the story actually begins.
Take him down, Joker!
That isn't to say that Persona 4 is bad, but if you have to muck about a lot to get to the actual meat of the game, that's kind of the issue that people can take towards a lot of video games. And we've seen this before in games like Twilight Princess, and it's a little bit worse in my opinion for Persona 4, because that's an RPG. Now, why did I go into a rant talking about Persona 4 and 5 in a video about YiiK? Well, that's because if you play YiiK, you realize that it decided to follow Persona 4's slow start and apply it to the entire game. The story, the dialogue, the battle system. And the worst part of it all? It's obvious that YiiK takes a lot of cues from Persona 4, and that's just not me saying it based on my experience, that's what Axe Studios themselves have stated that they took inspiration from.
I look like I'm joking!
And you can see this just by looking at both games. Both have a focus on small towns.
This town is miles away from your big city of perverts and assholes.
Both have a focus on the supernatural.
Strange.
Both have games that are focused on mystery elements, and both have a focus on a supposedly wacky cast of anime-like characters.
This ain't what you think. You got it all wrong. Hey!
Obviously, I believe Persona 4 is an objectively better game, not only because it's polished, style, and the fact it has girls that don't annoy the living crap out of me.
Senpai.
Okay, most of the girls. Still has a better selection than YiiK with that lousy piece of crap. So, if you couldn't tell, I don't like YiiK, a postmodern RPG, because it's a game that's rife with problems. From design issues to the characters to even some very off-putting controversies. Although I will say some of those controversies are kind of stupid, and they actually detract from the game in a much more meaningful manner than I would like to have. Because I prefer to judge a game based on what it is, and not what it's based on. But that's just me determining the quality of game, since controversy can actively hide the flaws of a game. So let me get this out of the way. Yes, I am aware of the plagiarized quote. I am aware of the use of Lisa Liam's death in the game. And of course, Awada's grave in the game. And those are bad things, to an extent. Do not take this to mean I'm excusing them, or if I don't talk about them, that means I am accepting them. To me, they only act as a smokescreen for the actual flaws of the game. And probably one of the worst parts of the game is the writing.
I sighed as the elevator began to shake, vibrating with motion.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
One of the best ways to get people mad at your game is to waste their time. There's a difference between padding out a game and making it complex. Like, it's not just the main character Alex who does this. The game will shovel a ton of exposition onto the player without nothing really to say or anything to keep the players entertained. For example, there's a scene where it's particularly bad with a two-person dialogue while your characters are pretty much discussing serious junk in a sewer.
But there's poop down here!
Why would you stay there to talk about how apparently there are multiple universes? Look, I get it. I know I can get distracted when people start talking about metaphysical BS.
Pay attention! One day you'll need to know what a quantum singularity is, and then you'll be sorry!
Yeah, right.
But you'd figure that you'd pick a place to talk about it where you don't run the risk of falling into sewage. Now, YiiK is a special case as one of the worst aspects of the game, other than having one of the worst people voicing the main character. YiiK tries to sound smart through its tens of hours of gameplay and story, but fails when you consider the fact that pretty much the entire thing throws everything out the window at the end. Rules are established and then they're broken. It just makes no sense. And while Alex is the main culprit of this, and trust me, I'm dedicating an entire section talking about him, the rest of the cast does this too. Like, take Rory. You meet him when he supposedly has information about Sammy Park, a girl who went missing and is basically the key starting point of the entire game. Sounds good, right? When you first meet the guy, he takes you around his town and spouts off metaphysical BS and supposedly deep stuff.
I have this theory about physicality and the nature of our universe. It has a lot to do with the temporal nature of our bodies. You can't tell me all of that is a coincidence.
Okay, not a big deal, especially when you consider the time of the scene. It doesn't really add up to 7 minutes. But did we really need...
The elemental composition of the human body can be looked at from the point of view of either mass composition or atomic composition. The adult male human body is approximately 57% water, and water is 11% hydrogen by mass, but 67% if you count atoms. Most of the mass of the human body is oxygen, but most of the atoms in the human body are hydrogen atoms.
Every day I wake up.
This before we got to the sewer dungeon. There's nothing wrong with having a part of your story that, in hindsight to the characters, was a waste of time. But if you're going to do that, you have to make sure not to waste your player's time as well, especially with stuff that's completely pointless. However, if you were to ask me, the biggest offender in this game would have to be this moped!
Tell me about this!
And this requires some explanation, because while I'm sure most people who are watching this are familiar with YiiK know exactly where the hell I'm going with this point, because almost every sucker who's played this game can tell you that this is one of the biggest wastes of time this game gives you, I'm going to do it anyway because I know there's going to be one jerk out there who's going to be complaining about this. Okay. So, you're on a quest to find a record to play for an interdimensional being known as a soul survivor. As you do! Huh. That's a neat looking cover. I can't help but wonder where I've seen that red-haired guy before. Anyway, we go around the entire map, getting our party save for one character, and finally go to the top of a mountain after dealing with a long dungeon. And when we finally get to the guy who supposedly has the record...
You, my dear boy, must listen to my greatest hit. Murder Run and Melancholia Reigns Unbroken.
Oh, shut up!
No joke, Mophead Mark here goes on to talk about a story about how his friend got indoctrinated into a water-drinking Pawnee scam in an attempt to stave off his immortality. So on top of having to go around searching for this damn record for about a good hour, we're now dealing with this bozo who doesn't show up in the game outside this one point.
The power of metal unites all! Oh! You see, heavy metal is the oral manifestation of all things good and powerful in the world. It contains the perfect positive energies to dispel hate, racism, sexism, poverty.
I'll give you a cookie if you shut up.
Of the metal gods channeling through my guitar strings, I was able to bring peace and prosperity to the Middle East.
And it wouldn't be so bad if the main character, Alex, didn't have his brains replaced with instant mashed potatoes.
Yeah, okay, enough about this topic. Can you tell me about this tea we're drinking?
We're here for the record, not tea! Why are we talking about tea? Oh, I'm sorry, but here's the biggest issue.
I found the jacket. Here, I have it with me.
Ah, yes. The Mystical Ultima LP Legend by Vela Wild.
Did you say Vela Wild?
Yeah. But didn't you know this already? It's on the cover. Did you even read it?
To hang myself.
Look, I can understand that some people are just dumb, and that they can't notice tiny little details. But for crying out loud, this record jacket has Alex on it. Did no one question this? And we know that Alex has been carrying the record jacket since there's lines of dialogue that says this. Nobody questioned why they're on the record. Claudio, Michael, Rory, why did no one look at this damn record? What the fuck? There's one more thing I need to talk about before I jump into gameplay, because if I keep doing this, I'm gonna go insane. And trust me, in the original draft of this script, I had jumped ship after that, but I need to talk about this because it talks about how the characters speak. I know that Alex is the poster boy of being the living hot air balloon, but some of what these other characters say can be really off-putting. Vela, aka the person who made the record, has a heart-to-heart with Alex, and we finally learn about her past in one of the weirdest ways possible.
And you never saw him again?
I did. It was May 22nd, 1998, 12:01 p.m. A minute into the first concert I had put on since his disappearance. I had refused to do our music live or release a distant voice until I had seen him again.
Like, I can appreciate the background to a character that Alex isn't pontificating about, but when you go into great detail like this, unless you're somehow planning someone's heart attack by writing them in the death note, who takes this much notice of the exact minute of when they get their heart broken?
Watch this, Lise. You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half. And now.
It comes off as robotic and takes me out of the story. Like, the best way I can put it is that I can see the man behind the curtain. I know this was written by someone who is trying way too hard to come off as deep. talk about the gameplay, since that's one of the lesser of evils in that regard. I hope. Dear God, I've written this script and I know I'm gonna get mad by reading it. Now, I said in my original video that the battle system took inspiration from Paper Mario and its sequel, The Thousand-Year Door, since it has things akin to small mini-games in order to make the attacks more effective. On paper, it's a good system to adapt for a game. It keeps the player engaged, and it can even make a tired system refreshed when it comes to adding new weapons or such to it, since that can change up the mini-games. That's actually a good idea! How does YiiK screw it up?
It's all the same shit.
We need to consider how the game is structured. YiiK's battle system falls more in line with a traditional RPG with the dramatic camera angles. Think like traditional Final Fantasy 7 or 8.
Trust me! I was in Soldier.
The thing about Paper Mario styled combat is that it's a more side view, so that way people can get a feel of timing and length in order to get the timing down for both dodging and attacking. YiiK, however, doesn't do that, since the enemies and characters are pretty much static where they stand, so even if it comes to timing with the animations, you won't be able to do that. Not that the characters and enemies actually move from where they're planted on the field, but you get my point. In addition, the minigames essentially pull you out from the battles in order to do them for attacking and defending. It wastes the player's time and makes it slow to go through, not to mention there's a massive disconnect between what you're doing with the attack. For Paper Mario, when you make the attack with your hammer and you basically wind up, you can actually feel yourself releasing the hammer as you bring it down. That's a good feeling. You get the damage of really slamming your hammer down onto the enemy's forehead. Even if you don't actually make it, you can still get some damage in. In YiiK, what am I doing in order to make Alex's record sharper or stronger or not break as soon as it hits an enemy? And if you fail, you get nothing! If that was the case, it'd be better to use a standardized battle system, and it's something that indie devs seem to not like to use. I suppose it's been a bit of a stigma by critics about the battle system, especially when it comes to turn-based RPGs, and frankly, that's kind of sad in that regard. It's fine if people don't like the systems, that's not my issue here. The issue is that people are flaunting their opinions around and people are using it to say that the systems are bad.
It's opinion, not news!
Persona 5, with its grace and flair, at the end of the day is a turn-based RPG. It's simple, it works, and it's quick.
When Persona 5's combat is more flawed than games that came out over a decade before it. It's not innovative, it's not deep, all it has going for it is its style.
I see, my ass!
You don't need to reinvent the wheel in order to make something good. And frankly, YiiK doesn't have that fluid combat or the interesting graphics in the battle to make it all that enjoyable, at least to me. And you know what's worse? Even if you manage to do these time-wasting minigames well, you still have a bit of a dice roll so you can have a chance of missing even if you do manage to succeed. And people had an issue with Pokemon being luck-based accuracy. And here's the thing about combat, it's a mixed bag. Not only are you forced to waste your time and keep your attention on the minigames, but that time will add up, especially when you have to do minigames in order to defend yourself as well. Well, at least until you get LP tossed and for some reason in the programming, Alex's special move for really low cost of MP wrecks the house even if you get one hit. But now we get to the second part of the gameplay wasting. The level up system. The Mind Dungeon. Alright, so you wanna know how you level up in the game? You go to the Mind Dungeon and expend your EXP in order to get your stats all set up. Not even kidding. You know how in most RPGs your leveling happens up like this?
This power.
You just get the level and your stats are distributed, sometimes depending on what you do in the battle. Not in YiiK! Inside Alex's mind are many levels with 4 doors each. Alex must approach each door individually, select which attribute he wants to level up, assign it to the door, and then enter the door to obtain that new skill set. At the end of each hallway is a doorway with a crow waiting to trade your experience points for access to another level at the Mind Dungeon. I'm sure you can see why that wastes so much time. The game attempts to streamline this by making it so if you talk to the crow, he'll just distribute the stats himself. But if that's the case, why even have this system? This adds so much fluff to the game when a simple level up system could have been used here. Hell, D&D has a better level up system, and in that one you have to write down your stats, and even then, this is such a boring system on how to do it.
It's so boring.
There's another aspect I neglected, and that's the focus on the party members. Back in my original video, I focused on Rory, but there are other issues with the characters, like take Chandra for example. Now, she's not a bad character, don't get me wrong. At least when it comes to the party. Her abilities are pretty good, since she can spread the effects of items across the party, which can make healing items work so much better. And that's where I have an issue with the game, since it gives you a surplus of healing items due to the fact that the game's economy is shot since you can have a surplus of them. The game has a combination of wasting your time, yet because of how you can abuse the system's resource management system, it becomes a slog, just not a skill slog.
Is that your hobby?
Is what my hobby?
Staring off into space and screwing up your face as if to say, what's going on inside my head is really important, so just let me think.
Hey, I don't make...
So, let's talk about the characters.
I'm Alex. This is Vela and Michael.
That if they play a game where the main character is unlikable or has to do some bad stuff, they immediately get triggered by it.
You boys take that stuff too seriously.
The characters suck! Okay, for the sake of argument and so I can pad this video out more to maximize my AdSense, let's talk about them. I guess I'll talk about the actual good characters.
The trick shot!
Claudio! Look, if there's one star in this dark sky of a game, it's Claudio. He happens to be the only real character that I actually enjoyed seeing on the screen, and he was genuinely entertaining.
Just let me know when you're ready to start training. Oh yeah!
It's a shame he wasn't in a better game, or that his love of anime wasn't his most defining trait and made him out to be nothing more than a butt of jokes.
You see, man, that's where you're wrong. Mahou Shoujo Haru no Shimai is the quintessential human anime. Without this series, the art form would have never progressed.
Hey, Claudio, wait up. So you're into shoujo anime? That's cool. Most guys aren't brave enough to walk around in a shirt like that. Also, you do know that's a girl shirt, right?
Girl shirt? Oh man, that's messed up. This is no more a girl shirt than Mahou Shoujo Haru no Shimai is a girl's anime!
Hell, the game even gives you something more interesting with its character. Claudio and Chandra, another character I'll talk about in a few moments, lost their brother ages ago, having disappeared into the ether when he was going up to see his friend's house.
You know, I had a dream last night. In my dream, I saw my brother, but my brother was you. Cute little kid grew up to be an ugly ginger like yourself.
And he became obsessed with these sorts of cases in order to find his brother. Until that goes poof!
Hey, don't go! I'm coming, wait for me!
Since I've mentioned her, Chandra is Claudio's brother.
He's a dumbass.
And that's it. She doesn't have a character. Legit, the only thing about her character that is actually memorable, and we get this at the very beginning when we meet her, before she fades into the background, is...
I'm sure if Aaron had been a beautiful white woman, everyone would have cared that he vanished. Everyone would have had a candlelight vigil and a moment of silence. But that's just not how these things work.
And while it isn't particularly great characterization, it's probably a little stereotypical too.
Wait, can anyone pick a lock here?
Yo, wouldn't it be hilarious if I could? Like, out of this ragtag band of misfit friends, the black guy could pick the lock.
Hey, Lee, you know how to pick a lock, right?
No. Why would you say that?
And don't pretend you didn't think it. So to answer your racist-ass question, I cannot pick a lock.
Well, you're, urban?
Oh, you are not saying what I think you're saying.
Jeez.
Well, at least not a car lock. I went through a Sherlock Holmes phase and learned to pick basic locks. You know, antique locks, Egyptian wooden pin locks, a warded lock, RFID locks if I had the right equipment. But definitely not a car lock.
Oh, I just threw up in my mouth.
It was something, but as the game goes on, she loses even that. Like, she doesn't really have that much of a reason to join the party other than, I don't want to be at work, let me dump this on an intern and go fight monsters for some ginger cracker.
Hey, careful with that word. That is our word.
Oh, shut the up! Now, with this structure, you'd figure that I'd talk about Alex next, but nope! I'm saving him for his own little segment. Let's talk about Rory. I'm sorry I keep going quiet, but these are terrible characters. Rory is an odd case too, because in all honesty, like Claudio, he has an interesting character concept when you first meet him. The whole idea that YiiK was built upon that people are spending too much time on the net and following stories as well as lying on the internet is actually very interesting. And we're introduced to Rory for lying about his sister's death in order to lie to himself.
I invented lying on the internet, so no need to warn me.
Sure, it's a waste of time like I already mentioned, but I actually can forgive that since it's actually a pretty good idea and concept. The execution and what happened afterwards is terrible.
My 12-year-old sister killed herself. She died right here. Right where we're standing.
Hey, dude, cool it with that! No one cares about your sister right now. We almost just died ourselves.
Alex, what is wrong with you? How can you be so selfish?
What's worse is that this doesn't really go anywhere. The only other notable aspect about Rory is that you can either kiss him or drive him to suicide. Yeah, I know, that's quite the contrast. And this stands out in the game because this is practically the only actual choices that affect the story in that regard. I mean, Alex is not supposed to be a player insert. He's not really designed that way. And yet we're given choices for how we can actually affect Rory and see if he'll live or die. It just stands out so badly, and it's just so weird. Why would you care about Alex's opinion about you?
Dude, cool it with that! No one cares about your sister right now. We almost just died ourselves.
The guy was a dick to you. Why would you care about what he has to think about you? It's especially jarring when you learn about this.
Hey, Vela, it's Alex. I have something I need to talk to you about in person, and...
Alex, where the hell have you been? It's just absolutely terrible. Rory committed suicide.
What?
We went to his funeral last night. Where the hell were you?
Great. You owe me a TV, man.
You know what's actually funny is that Vela was with Alex before he disappeared, and now she's blaming him for what he didn't have any control over. Anyway, back to Rory. He basically has no reason to join the party, especially after Alex blows up on him. So, I don't know what the hell's keeping him around. Michael. Well, hey, this is the first time I'm not being quiet after I say a character's name. That's cool. Well, he wasn't actually interesting, but he served the plot as he was a major part of the online conspiracy website, Onism, and he raided Freddy Krueger's closet, so hey, there's gotta be something there that's interesting.
RPG games are seriously the best! Chrono Trigger, Lufia 2, Secret of Mana? Those games are like the holy grail of my youth!
Well, Michael has a bit of a walking start in the story. He slowly fades into the background, only coming out to insult Alex and jab at him and the rest of the party every once in a while. Now, while I can still see this as a bad thing, in the context of the story, it's actually pretty unique when I look back on it, as we learn Michael apparently moved away as a kid and that he and Alex got into a fight before he did. Which, you know, considering the plot of the game, makes sense. And is a nice touch when I think about it. At least until Michael loses his shirt. Yes, I said shirt. You all have dirty minds.
I am me, but I am also her, or him.
I am thou, thou art me. We're a happy family.
I have my memories, but they also don't belong to me.
Hey! Alex! Help me! I'm stuck in a mind dungeon!
The very act of experiencing a parallel life is mind-shattering. When we are born, we immediately begin developing a series of biases and defenses that help us ground ourselves.
Oh wow, he became all zen and needs to shave his chest and he's still boring as all hell. And finally we have Vela, probably the most important character aside from Alex. And normally I'd be down for that. But she also acts as probably the biggest lore dump in the entire game, and throw in the odd speaking styles that I've said before, she comes off as extremely dull, and honestly, I just wanted to mash the buttons to make sure she would stop talking. It's not like most of the stuff she says actually matters. The game seems to follow the rules it sets and then breaks the same rules whenever it feels like. Which is a shame, because she started off pretty interesting. She's a girl with psychic powers. That's a pretty good concept. How do you screw that up? Now, looking individually, each of the characters tend to be as shallow as a puddle, most of the time. But sometimes you can have a dull cast, yet be driven on their interactions between the group, basically seeing friction and cohesion. Yeah, we don't get that here. I don't know, it just comes off as totally artificial, like really isn't a dynamic amongst the characters. With the exception of arguing with Alex, most of these characters don't really show any interactions, save for a few times.
Go home, wash off your eyeliner, apologize to your parents, and go back to being normal kids.
Wow, Vella! Sounds like you're speaking from experience!
But just a handful of these interactions don't really make me care for these characters as a group, and at the end of the day, they all just die. No, literally, that is what happens in the game. They die. Meaning whatever arcs they got just end and we get no closure. Like, I suppose I could like these characters, but they just don't seem to gel with me. They don't stand out. Their designs don't really speak to me. Again, I feel like I'm seeing people who are working together because the writer wants to be that way, especially when you consider that whenever Alex screws up to the group, almost immediately forgives his stupidity without any other conflict. Especially when you consider Alex.
I picture what it would be like to be the owner, and I imagine describing him to a friend. Lonely? Nah, I don't get too lonely. Besides my mom, there's only a cat. An old cat. But a good friend to talk to.
I think the biggest issue people had with YiiK, and I myself need to admit I too have issues with it, is the main character, Alex.
I wanted to make a game about a guy who's like a piece of shit, unlikable character who by the end of the game has to transform.
Well, mission accomplished!
Yeah. But too many gamers, when they look at this, when they play a game, they're so used to having to identify with the character that if they play a game where the main character is unlikable or has to do some bad stuff, they immediately get triggered by it.
And that's the point of Alex. He's not meant to be likable, which is fine. I actually like quite a few games where the main characters are unlikable, or just plain jackasses, or undesirable. Cloud Strife,
You owe me a pizza.
Brad Armstrong, and a number of characters from the Disgaea series, and many more. These characters, while doing deplorable things or being unlikable, have something that Alex doesn't, and that's entertainment and actual growth. Alex throughout the game were given many times where we see him berate himself, going on to long tangents with little monologues, arguing with a stuffed panda that actually acts as his own consciousness. And a lot of this is stuff that you can cut from the game, and it wouldn't affect the game's story at all!
I dated a girl in college who was a women and gender studies major. She told me that she believed men and women were all the same.
There is nothing wrong with having a little bit of dialogue like this in your game. Heck, shooting the breeze is a good window into allowing people to see your characters in a more relaxed environment. Reading your characters' thoughts allows your people to get into the minds of these characters. But when your game is suffocating with this, and it's mostly coming from the main character, it's not going to want to get players to keep invested. The thing about terrible characters that can make them engaging is wanting to have the audience eventually rooting for them. Either to see them grow to become better, or they have a goal that we the audience can relate to. Brad Armstrong from Lisa the Painful does have a noble goal, to save his adoptive daughter, Buddy. Sure, he does terrible things, but he has a good goal. At first. It's something to look the player in and keep you going along with the character as long as he does terrible things. Alex does start off with something like that, trying to find Sammy Park, but that goal is slowly pushed into the background and only brought up at the end of the game. Are you starting to notice a theme here? Now, I don't like Alex, and while they may have been designed that way, I'm only human, and unfortunately Alex doesn't grow on me as a character. We're told he does, but we don't see that growth. And even when he tries to stop the world from ending by ending the two Sid Vicious knockoffs, he doesn't take responsibility. He puts that on you, the player. Yeah, the game breaks the fourth wall. Get in here! Oh, shut the up! But to actually swing for YiiK, there are a few criticisms about Alex that I don't agree with, and I have to disagree with my original thoughts on him in my first video. First, Alex is not an author insert. Yes, there are aspects where you can see Andrew Allison, one of the developers of YiiK, putting himself into the character, but that can be said for every author and how they can see a little small bit of themselves in their characters. Most people will see this image and think that this is Andrew, but it's not. This is Andrew! Don't get me wrong, I stand by my criticism of Alex and YiiK as a whole, but that doesn't mean I appreciate the misinformation attributed to the game. The second issue is that, and I'm ashamed for myself for having done this myself in my original video, is that the game doesn't really forgive Alex for his horrible actions. At least not in the same regard as I initially postulated last year in my video. Yes, I think the party for giving Alex is a bit too quick for my liking. However, the penultimate message of the game is that through his selfish actions, Alex got his friends killed and he's left alone. It's probably the biggest slap in the face to a character like him can get. As a side note, remember when I brought up that Rory scene way back when this video started?
Hey, dude, cool it with that! No one cares about your sister right now! We almost just died ourselves!
Alex! What is wrong with you? How can you be so selfish?
You're an asshole, Alex. I thought you came to help me.
Yeah, back when you didn't lie to us! You realize you've been leading us on this whole time about your sister? You acted like this was connected to Sammy!
Both of you, try and calm down. Alex, leave Rory alone. That's uncalled for. And Rory, breathe with me. In, out. Yeah, just like that.
Yeah, I actually stand by Alex in this regard. Cause let's think about this logically. You're searching for someone who went missing right before your eyes, and some emo git who messed up his dye job dangles some information that's might related to her. He drags you all around his town, into a sewer where you're forced to fight a life and death situation against a golden alpaca, and you almost die, and you find out it was a lie. Would you go, "Oh, don't worry, chap. We'll try this again later"? No! You'd be pissed off! So I actually agree with Alex with this point that Rory did lie to them and almost cost everyone their lives.
In school that changed you. Just think about it, dude. Yeah, why are you being such a dick, Alex? Seriously, man, keep it together. I know you got scared because we almost died down there, but can't you see that Rory is hurt? His sister freaking killed herself! I don't get you, dude. You know full well that you're overreacting, but you just won't back down. Will it kill you to say you're sorry? Seriously? Say you're sorry.
Obviously, this movie has its head up its own anus.
The only problem is that the game shames me and him for it. Not for long enough, though, because the characters instantly forgive Alex and becomes a fart in the distance. But Alex isn't a bad character because he's a bad person or does bad things. He's a bad character because he's annoying, and most of his dialogue is filled with nothing but fluff and him going blah 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 blah.
Is that your hobby?
Is what my hobby?
Staring off into space and screwing up your face as if to say, what's going on inside my head is really important, so just let me think.
It's a really high bar for people to connect with a character. Because even less than desirable characters, even bad characters can be considered classics. Take Joel from The Last of Us. He's probably one of the worst people in the entire game series with him killing people left and right. But he's become a softer character in the story for Ellie and is willing to do what he can at the end of his journey to save her. It's why his death in part 2 is impactful, because a lot of the people could sympathize with him. Meanwhile, Alex doesn't have that same thing going on. Now, I've seen interviews, I've listened to podcasts, and I've seen where Andrew Allison is saying that Alex is supposed to grow as a character. But most of his growth comes at the very end of the game, and by then, most players probably don't care if Alex becomes a better person because it's all dumped into the final stage. So I guess all I can say is, oh, shut the up! I think it's important for me to say that while I have been harsh in this video, I still have respect for Axe Studios and Andrew Allison. Look, I don't like their product, but at least they still put a product out there, which is more than I can say about a lot of developers. At least their game works, and while there are some rough corners here and there, it's not a huge mess. That being said, while I can respect YiiK in some regard, and I can understand it's a game that's meant to be close to developers, especially considering it was being worked on with the Allison brothers losing their mother in the process of development, I understand losing someone like that and how it can effectively mess with you both in the real world and your creative minds. I made an entire video that was dedicated to that person that I lost too. So trust me, I understand how hard it can be and how it can affect you in so many ways. But as a critic, all I can do is be honest with my thoughts and emotions and how I react to the product that Act Studios put out. Not the one they are making right now, but the one they initially put out. It's been out for almost 2 years at this point, and with that content update, it may be a bit of a long shot to fix all the issues that I and many others have put out there in the public. I do hope that YiiK does improve, and I hope that if Act makes new games, that these will be good games that are well received. I will admit that most of the criticisms that YiiK received were blown way out of proportion, that they were made way too big. There is potential. I can even see it in YiiK. It just took a downward turn into the abyss for me. But hey, that's just me. What are your guys' thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm MangaKamen, and remember to examine your fandom. Thanks for watching.